know is his love for the people of our province. This is an example of how collaboration, of how a federation, of how Canada should work. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you to my friend, Minister LeBlanc, for your tireless efforts in recognizing the importance of this complex issue for the province and indeed the region. Your continued efforts will allow for growing a green, clean, stable economy in the Atlantic region. And of course, thank you, Minister O'Regan. We are so grateful for your strong voice and advocacy for the people of this province at the national table. I'm personally thankful for your guidance and support, along with your fellow MPs. It's not my intention to sit here and review or criticize the decisions that were made in the past. That's been done and done again. I want to focus on this first push. I want to focus on the many hands on the stone before us and the momentum we can build as we move it forward together. Working with our partners in Ottawa, we will begin the push to set us on sound financial ground when it comes to Muskrat Falls, rate mitigation, and advancing our goals for the Atlantic Loop. Demonstrating Ottawa's commitment, they have again appointed Serge Dupont as a new federal special representative and lead negotiator as a counterpart to Brendan Paddock, who leads our own provincial rate mitigation team. Together, they will continue to advance this work through both levels of government. We are pleased to announce today that the focus has been directly on our biggest hurdles, reducing the immediate fiscal pressures on the province from the project. Federal and provincial governments have been completing work to provide significant interim support to Newfoundland and Labrador, reducing our cash requirements related to servicing the Lower Churchill's debt and other financial obligations. This means the province doesn't have to borrow $844 million in payments, almost all of which would have been required this month and added to our debt. This measure provides financial flexibility to complete this project and reduces the immediate requirement for significant funds and associated borrowing costs. It also demonstrates the restructuring process has begun in earnest and sets the stage for the next exciting phase of negotiations. This important next phase speaks to the future of the province and includes an agreement on the scope of financial restructuring and commitment to advance interests associated with the Atlantic Loop. We will start by redefining the financial structure of this project to ensure a financially stable, long-term solution. We will complete and implement a restructuring agreement by the time of commissioning. This may include federal participation in the capital structure, equity, and debt profile on the projects, and the potential monetization of assets, such as expected income from the Labrador Island Link. Second, we will together assess opportunities to support the Atlantic Loop and broader electrification objectives in Newfoundland and Labrador. And finally, we have agreed on a critical path forward, including key milestones and a robust governance structure. We will develop a draft term sheet by the spring and complete restructuring agreement by the project's commissioning. Today, with this first bold step, we start the new momentum. For all of us who have been worried about the issues surrounding Muskrat Falls and what it could bring to bear on the people of this province, I want you to know that we have heard you, we understand, and we have actively taken action here today to make a difference. Yes, there's much more work to be done, but working together with our partners in Ottawa, joint oversight will be the mandate. Putting Newfoundlanders and Labradorians at ease is the true goal, through creating a stable, clean environment for families to grow, work, and play. But rest assured, there are many hands on this stone. It will move. It moved today, and it will keep moving. Thank you. I now welcome my friend, Minister O'Regan.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you, Prime Minister, for being here. It's important for people to know that the federal government recognizes the scale of the problem of Muskrat Falls and the impact it will have on our province. As MPs, we know it because our families, our friends, our neighbors remind us about this all the time. We watch the news every night. We're ratepayers too, and we're keenly aware of what is coming down the wire. That's why we're meeting those challenges head on. These negotiations will look at various options that are in the joint interests of both governments. And what is in the joint interests of both governments is a long-term, permanent solution. We said that we would be there to help, and we are. Because when we stay focused on common objectives, our governments are capable of getting the hard stuff done. We saw that last year in the renewed Atlantic Accord, which is an additional $2 billion over the next 10 years to the people of the province. We saw that this year in the $395 million invested to create jobs and lower emissions and make it more competitive on our offshore. We're seeing that today. We have to keep working together to deliver clarity, certainty, and predictability to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, because delivering certainty is how we will secure prosperity for our province. Today is a good day for ratepayers, a good day for Newfoundland and Labrador. Minister LeBlanc, back to you.
Well, thank you, Seamus, and it's also a good day for Canada. Canadians, as the Prime Minister noted, are very attached to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and today's announcement shows what the Prime Minister has said over and over again, that our partnership with the government of Premier Furey is real, and we look forward to the work in the months ahead. So, Prime Minister, thank you for joining us this morning. Andrew and Seamus as well. I'm happy to be a small part of this very important day for Newfoundland and Labrador in Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Andrew. So good to see you. Thank you, Seamus, for all your hard work on this. All of you have a wonderful Christmas, and pass on all my very, very best, especially for a Happy New Year, which I think is everyone's priority, to all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Prime Minister, and thanks for your leadership on this COVID crisis. We're very lucky to have you at the helm.
Now, vaccines are good news for all of us, and we've all worked together. Thank you so much for everything you've done around the Council of the Federation as well, Andrew, to make sure we're ready for this moment. Having an MD around the table has been a nice bonus for us all.
Well, thanks very much. Merry Christmas, guys. Merry Christmas, Dom.
Merry Christmas,
Thanks again.
all.
Merry Christmas, colleagues. Thanks again.
We are still speeding in the wrong direction, and the world has also emitted more than 200. still speeding in the wrong direction, and the world has also emitted more than 200.
Bon vendredi, tout le monde. It's been a difficult year. There's no other way to put it. But when times get tough, Canadians step up. I want to start today by thanking all Canadians for all their efforts in the fight against this global pandemic. You've made a lot of sacrifices over the past many months. You helped keep people safe. You helped save lives. Everything we did, small and big, in following public health orders, in making sure that ourselves and our loved ones and frontline workers were safe, made a difference. So thank you. On this 8th and final day of Hanukkah, and with only 1 week to go until Christmas, there are more than 75,000 active COVID-19 cases across the country. Deaths per capita are continuing to rise in many G7 countries, including Canada. Countries around the world continue to feel the pain of the second wave. We need to take this very seriously as numbers continue to head in the wrong direction. Our fight against this virus is not over, even as we're preparing to say goodbye and good riddance to 2020. It may be the holiday season, but we have to be more careful than ever. On Monday, vaccinations started for the most vulnerable and our frontline workers. Canada has secured agreements for up to 417,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines ahead of schedule. This includes over 200,000 early doses of the Pfizer vaccine scheduled for next week and 168,000 doses of the Moderna vaccine before the end of December, pending Health Canada approval. I want to assure you again that any vaccine approved in Canada will be both safe and effective, and that health experts are making those decisions independently. In January, we'll be getting 125,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine per week for a total of about 500,000 doses for the month. With the guaranteed millions of doses coming in 2021, every Canadian who wants a vaccine will get one, no matter where they live. This is the largest immunization campaign in our country's history, and I know that we have the right plan and the expertise that we need. But getting a vaccine in a week or in a month won't do you any good if you catch COVID-19 today. That's why we need to keep working to halt the spread of COVID-19. So please, continue to follow public health guidelines. Avoid gatherings, practice social distancing, use the COVID Alert app, do the right thing for the most vulnerables, and think of being careful as a gift you can directly give your fellow Canadians, especially frontline workers who continue to step up every single day to keep us safe, to keep Canadians safe. Nous faisons beaucoup d'efforts pour nous assurer que les Canadiens aient accès à des vaccins sécuritaires et efficaces partout au pays. En même temps, nous travaillons aussi à nous procurer et à développer des traitements pour combattre la COVID-19 ainsi que d'autres infections virales. À ce sujet, j'annonce aujourd'hui un investissement de près de 9 millions de dollars par le biais du Centre national de recherche du Canada pour soutenir le développement de ces traitements. Cet investissement ira vers 4 compagnies pour leurs candidats de traitement contre la COVID-19, dont 2 à Montréal et 2 à Vancouver. Il est important de continuer à développer des solutions ici au Canada afin de lutter contre la COVID-19 et de se préparer pour d'autres éventuelles pandémies. C'est en travaillant avec les chercheurs, les scientifiques et les entreprises que nous allons y arriver. For many Canadians, the holidays are a time to cook good food and have a few extra pieces of dessert because, well, why not? But for far too many others, the reality is very different, especially during this pandemic. More than a third of Canadians who rely on food banks are children. That's unacceptable. In a country like Canada, no child should go hungry. In October, our government announced another $100 million under the Emergency Food Security Fund, doubling our investment from the spring. This morning, Minister Bibeau outlined the details of where that addition to help vulnerable people and communities. I want to say a special thank you to all the volunteers and workers at food organizations who've stepped up to help their fellow Canadians. I met many of you virtually in October, and I remember you sharing how you had to adapt really quickly when the pandemic hit. Thank you for your work, your time, your generosity, and for your commitment to answering the call for others in need. Je sais qu'on aurait tous espéré que la situation soit différente pour les fêtes. L'année a déjà été difficile et on vous demande encore de faire des efforts. Mais ce n'est pas le temps de lâcher. Il y a de l'espoir. On sait que les vaccins arrivent. On n'était pas sûr qu'il allait y avoir des vaccins contre la COVID-19 quand on en parlait il y a 6 mois. Mais nos chercheurs, nos scientifiques ont fait un...
Let me welcome you all to South Asian Environment Dialogue. As you know, this is a program, it's a weekly program being hosted by the Canadian television channel Climate Channel in collaboration with the Indian channel The Plural. It's a media platform. And for the last few months, we have been talking about various issues of environment and climate change in this region, in this part of the world, which I believe one of the vulnerable part environmentally throughout the world. And in the last few weeks, we have been discussing climate change. You know that this is the time when the climate summits being organized. This year, COVID and all this have stopped the summit. But this week we are going to talk about topics which is, I believe, is extremely important, especially in this COVID era. All of you know that honey is something which is being considered as one of the major immunity booster or immunity contributor to the people. And people all over, I don't know a person, a family which is not consuming honey in their morning diet. But that honey is not honey at all. That honey is basically a sugar syrup. That has what been found by the environmental think tank, CSE, Center for Science and Environment, one of the frontline global environmental think tank. They allege through their scientific study that honey is not really honey, it's a sugar syrup or sugar syrup mixed adulterated honey. And when I have talked to the various friends of mine across Nepal, across Bangladesh and other countries, they say they feel the situation may be similar in their countries. So we today are trying to unravel the honey mystery. The honey mystery we'll try to unravel today. And I have a fabulous team. I'll be introducing the panel with you. And also we are trying to have somebody from Sundarbans from West Bengal, state of West Bengal in India, in the southernmost point of the state and the easternmost point of the country. Somebody who has been collecting honey from Sundarbans wild forest infested with tigers for more than 3 decades. We will be trying to hear him that what the ground level experience. But before I go to that, I introduce the panel and go to the program itself. Let me share with you the environmental headlines for the last week or so in the world, South Asia in particular. Well, we start with the COVID. COVID has led to reduction in global carbon emission. The dip in global carbon dioxide is estimated to hit a historical high of 7% in 2020 across the world, from 36.4 gigatons in 2019 to expected 34 gigatons, according to the Global Carbon Project's latest carbon budget. India is set to outpace the global average. India is, in a way, elephant in the room. In the South Asia, India's carbon emission is definitely very high, with an estimated 8.2% contraction of carbon emission this year, only third to US and the European Union in annual emission cut. So if that is the major news, the next news is even more interesting. Mount Everest is now taller by 2.8 feet as China and Nepal finally agree on the height of the world's highest peak. We know that Nepal and China were not talking in the same language on Mount Everest height, but now they agree. The height of Mount Everest has been revised from 8848 meters to 8848.86 meters. That's a difference of 2.8 feet. So Mount Everest is now taller by 2.8 feet. This is the first ever joint statement by Nepal and China, who house Mount Everest. Third is the greenhouse gas emission, back to climate change, reached a new high last year, putting the world on track, despite that 7% dip, putting the world on track for an average temperature rise of 3 degrees Celsius. A UN report, that emission gap report, showed recently. And also the researchers at Europe's Copernicus Climate Change Service said last month, or the last November, this November, was the hottest ever November. I go to CSE's representative, Dr. Khurana, for his initial response. Let me introduce the panel for you. The panel is Mr. Amit Khurana. Mr. Khurana is the Director, Food Safety and Toxins, Center for Science and Environment. Thank you, Mr. Khurana, for being in the program. Thank you, Mr. Khurana. I have with me Mr. Matthew John, co-founder, Director of Keystone Foundation. He's also from India. Thank you, Mr. John, for being in the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have with me Dr. Maqsudur Rahman. Dr. Rahman is the Chief Executive, Bangladesh Environmental and Development Society, in short, BEDS. And it's wonderful to have him in this program. I know he's been working on various related issues, including honey. Thank you, Mr. Rahman, for being here. Thank you.
Hello.
And thank you, Mr. Rahman. And I also have with me Mr. Ram Charitra Shah. Mr. Shah is from Nepal. He's the Executive Director and Environmental Scientist, Center for Public Health and Environment Development, CEPHED. So, Mr. Shah, thank you for being in the program, and we are looking forward to hear Nepal's experience from you. And also I have with me Shankar Ari. Shankar Ari is from Sundarban area. Shankar Ari Sundarban Anchole, Sundarban area of West Bengal, state of West Bengal in India. Mr. Ari, we hope, আমরা মনে করি যে আপনার কথা আমরা শুনতে পাবো। আমি জানি আপনার ওখানে নেটওয়ার্কের সমস্যা আছে, but we'll try to have your voice heard. So that's a panel for me. Thanks for joining the program. Let me start with Mr. Khurana. Mr. Khurana, it's a huge expose, especially honey being now more than 2,000 crore industry in India is booming post this COVID. And just initially, you tell me, what is the scam? What is the illegal, illegitimate part of it? And how you did it, we'll come to the later. But tell me, what is the thing, Mr. Khurana?
So, Jayanta, since you've asked me to be very brief, I can just let you know that this is honey fraud is a very important or critical kind of fraud that happens in the world. And we can just let you know from our investigation, which actually had a laboratory component and other research and on-field research, that honey is actually not supposed to have anything from outside. But we could figure out that honey is adulterated. It is adulterated with sugar syrups. And the business of adulteration is more worrying than the actual adulteration. Because the business is sophisticated, it's evolved, and the laboratory tests typically cannot catch this adulteration. So that's the basic fundamental aspect of this, that the honey that we are eating, most of it that we tested, popular brands that we tested, actually failing on all purity tests.
Okay, just a bit more to elaborate on that. I understand that you have tested most of the major brands that's being sold in India. And many of these brands also go to, I think, the countries like Nepal and Bangladesh as well. So what's your experience with the major brands? Let me tell my kind of who have been seeing this program is that that South Asian Environment Dialogue has done no study on this. What we are talking today are on the basis of CSE study. So we have not done ourselves any study or any kind of research on that. So we are not qualified enough to talk about this. And I also just a rider that various companies, honey companies, have said that they are countering the CSE's position. Though I believe Mr. Khurana will let us know that this is yet to be a court case on there. I don't know the latest. Mr. Khurana, what are the main kind of brands and all this you are getting problem? Mr. Khurana.
Yeah, so we tested about 13 brands, and 8 of those are like very popular brands which sell processed honey, blended honey. And we could figure out that out of these overall 13, 10 brands were failing on the purity tests. Okay. And almost all processed honey, which is sold, as I said, by big brands, was failing on except 3 brands overall were actually found to be adulterated. That's the crux of it.
Okay, so that's quite a huge news. It means that most of the honey being sold, branded honey in India, are, as per CSE's report, are being adulterated. Let me come to first Nepal. Ramcharitra Shah, you said that you are also taking this up with your government. What is happening in Nepal and how you are taking it up, Mr. Shah?
Yes, sir. Thank you for this opportunity to flag the Nepalese situation of honey, probable honey scam here as well. Okay. After releasing the CSE report, we thought that being a organization working on the public health issue, we thought that, and we see same brand of honey is widely available in Nepalese market. So we might have the same situation of adulteration honey in Nepal. So after listening that report, going through that, I raised that issue with our minister, Honorable Minister Ghanshyam Bhushal, who is the current minister at the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, under which this food quality falls. So I raised this issue. I shared the link of that report, and then immediately second day, I raised the issue with him on the 4th December through message. And the next day they replied, their secretariat replied me, okay, we have asked our concerned department to do the testing and collect the sample and do the testing. And then second day after that, I had the meeting with the Department of Food Control, Food Technology and Quality Control Department, which is the concerned department testing all these food safety issues. So and they said now that we are already collecting.
So do you have the infrastructure in Nepal?
Testing,
do you have the infrastructure in Nepal to test
like
it?
Actually, actually the fraud CSE found in the honey, Nepal does not have the capacity to test that C4CE and then sugar syrup, SMR or TMR or another NMR. And therefore, I urge when I meet our Director General and the Deputy Director General, I suggested them collect all the domestic as well as imported sample and try to send. I know that you don't have the capacity to test that particular.
So, great. I understand that. So you'll be sending it outside, and that's very important takeoff. I think CSE's exposure has kind of going through the South Asia. I'll come to you later. But let me go to Maqsuda Saab. Mr. Rahman, that you are, what is the situation in Bangladesh? What is happening in Bangladesh? What do you feel in Bangladesh honey? How much is honey and how much is sugar syrup?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jayanto. This is the great opportunities to me.
Actually, this platform is all for that. This platform is meant for all of you to come and talk together.
Yeah, I'm very happy to share my experience because last few years I also involved with this honey business, basically in the Sundarbans region of Bangladesh. Basically, I'm also working with Bangladesh Environment and Development Society, and we work for honey collectors group in the Sundarbans regions, the people who collect the honey from the Sundarbans. So basically, in the Sundarbans region, that's Mr. Khurana already mentioned that the sugar problem. So basically, in the Sundarbans region, also the main problem in the honey is the sugar. I just share my experience that the customer and the honey collectors, there's a big trust, lack of trustness among them. The customer always thinking, maybe the sugar mixed with this honey. But the honey collectors who collect the honey from the Sundarbans, actually they are not the culprit of this mixing the.
Then who are the culprits?
According to our working experience, I think some middlemen also involved with this process.
They are the culprits.
So the middlemen sometimes for getting more benefit, they try to mix the sugar.
Maqsuda, we'll see this hear these details, but just let me know at this point of time that the Indian brands are being also sold in Bangladesh. The big brands of India, which are being found by CSE as being adulterating honey, are they being sold in Bangladesh as well?
Yes, the Dabur, I think also
sold here. Patanjali is another big brand here. Patanjali is a big brand. There are other brands as well, so they are being sold.
No, basically the Dabur is very famous in Bangladesh.
Very famous. Tell me that after this CSE exposure, is there any thought in the Bangladesh government so far, officially documented as being Nepal, Ramcharitra Saab has said, is there any effort to test the quality of your honey? Is there any quality control new initiative there? Have you heard anything so far?
Basically, in Bangladesh, the BSTI, the Bangladesh Testing Standard Testing Institute, they are the main responsible organization for quality control of.
But have they taken up this issue after CSE's exposure?
Up to now, I think
not really.
I didn't
not
get
really.
any information.
Okay, we'll come to that. We'll come to that. Let me come to Mr. John. Mr. John, you were making a very interesting point that sugar syrup or not, honey is being adulterated in different manner. Not adulterated, might be misused or whatever. His health properties being lost. If you can throw light on that, Mr. John.
Yeah, I want to come at it from another angle.
Sure.
I think when we are talking about this adulteration of honey, the key species of honey that we are talking about is Apis mellifera.
Right.
And Apis mellifera is a European species of bee, which was introduced in the late 80s, early 90s by the government of India in reaction to a virus that had affected one of the Indian species of bees, the Apis cerana. Now, Apis mellifera comes with its own set of problems. It has its own set of mites issues. But what it has done is it has uprooted the Indian industry in a way where it has tilted the entire industry towards mellifera, which is a very monocultural bee. When it feeds on a certain species, it provides pollination for just that particular species.
Okay.
Now, what it has also done because of the kind of bee and the management that is involved in it, it is very highly capital intensive. And so small beekeepers have been pushed out of this system. And so from Kashmir all the way to Bihar, we have an entire industry running on Apis mellifera honey. Now, what is interesting is that the European Union does not recognize any of the Indian species of bees and the honey they produce as honey. And they recognize only Apis mellifera as honey, the honey from that species. And so this adulteration process has made a mess of the entire bee industry in India, where we are not recognizing or promoting our own indigenous bees. The honey, till a few years ago, 60 to 70% of our honey used to come from the giant Indian rock bee. We never talk about it. We never talk and bring those communities to the fore, their tradition, their culture. We completely go into an industrialized scenario where we want to homogenize everything. We want to standardize everything. We have our government bodies who do not want to recognize the entire ecotones, the ecotypes in our countries, and just want to create one standard.
So
that's a problem for us.
So you're basically saying that we are compromising with our own indigenous honey types and being only promoting the European types, and that's is a huge mistake, and not really the Make in India that we are talking about. So in fact, I'll come to that again. But let me go to Shankar Ari. For those who do not understand Bengali, because Mr. Ari is Bengali native and he can only communicate with me in Bengali. Masudu Saab can understand that, but those who are in the panel or are watching this program who are not understanding Bengali maybe have some problem, but I will translate it for you. So don't worry, because I have to have him. Shankar Babu, আপনি কি শুনতে পাচ্ছেন আমার কথা?
হ্যাঁ, শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
শঙ্কর বাবু, আপনি আমায় একটু বলুন, আপনি কতদিন ধরে, আপনি তো সুন্দরবনের কোথায় থাকেন? গোসাবা? গোসাবা কোন জায়গায়?
বালিওয়ান।
বালিওয়ানে থাকেন। তো বালিওয়ানের উল্টো দিকেই তো জঙ্গল।
হ্যাঁ, আমার এরিয়ার সামনে গোমা নদী এবং তারপর থেকে সম্পূর্ণ কোর এরিয়া।
পুরো কোর এরিয়া। তো আপনি কত বছর মধু সংগ্রহ করছেন? কত বছর?
আজকের 32-33 বছর।
32-33 বছর। তো আপনি আমায় একটু বলুন যে আপনার I just kind of translate it for convenience because you're all hearing it. What Mr. Shankar Ari lives in Goshaba block in an island called Bali Island, and what he's saying that just beyond this island is a core Sundarban forest infested with tigers, and within that tiger infested area he has been collecting honey for the last 3 decades, more than the last 3 decades. The 32 years he has been doing it. So let hear his story. Shankar Babu, আপনি এই যে 32 বছর আপনি মধু করছেন, এই কতটা মানে সারা বছরে মধু কতটা কালেকশন হয়, কিরকম টাকা পয়সা পান?
ধরুন একটা টিমে যদি 15 দিনে আমরা পাশে যাই, তাতে আমাদের 15 দিনে হয়তো 10 কুইন্টাল কি 12 কুইন্টাল মধু হয়।
আচ্ছা,
7 জন 8 জন লোকে 12 কুইন্টাল মধু হলো ওই 1.5 কুইন্টাল করে মাথা পার হেডে পাই আর কি।
আচ্ছা, আর দাম কেমন পান?
দাম ওটা কখনো পাইকারিকে আমরা দিই না, ওটা আমরা লোকাল মধুটা বিক্রি করি। ফরেস্টকে দিয়েই পার হেডে ওরা এখন বাধ্যতামূলক করেছে, পার হেডে 25 কেজি ওটা ফরেস্টকে দিয়ে আসতে হয়।
কত টাকা করে দাম? কত টাকা করে কেজি?
155 টাকা।
155 টাকা। আর বাইরে বাজারে কত? 250-300?
বাজারে 250-300।
আচ্ছা, 250-300। এবং কত টাকা হয় মানে আপনাদের এক একজনের গড় পড়তা 1030 টাকা বছরে?
হ্যাঁ, 30-35 হাজার টাকা করে হয় বছরে।
30,000 টাকা মতো করে, 25,000 টাকা মতো হয়। আর আরেকটা কথা বলুন, আপনাদের আগে যারা যত মধু সংগ্রহ করতো, মধু সংগ্রহ করার লোক কি কমে যাচ্ছে আগের তুলনায়?
আগের তুলনায় অনেক কমে যাচ্ছে, কেন জঙ্গল খালের পরিস্থিতি খুব খারাপ, বাঘেরও চাপ বেড়ে গেছে।
আচ্ছা,
আর তারপরে মধু যে কালেকশন করে যে যদি প্রচুর পরিমাণে আগে যেভাবে মধুর পার্টি আমাদের বেরোতো, এই মধু কালেকশন করে যে আমরা মার্কেটিং করব সেই রকম কোনো জায়গা নেই,
মার্কেটিং এর জায়গা নেই,
জায়গা নেই।
আচ্ছা, আর বাঘের কথা বললেন, বাঘের আক্রমণ আপনি কতবার জীবনে বাঘের সামনে এসেছেন?
বছরে 2-1 বার করে তো আমাদেরকে পড়তেই হয়।
বছরে 2-1 বার মানে 30 বছরে 50 বার?
আরো বেশি হতে পারে।
আরো বেশি হতে পারে। আচ্ছা, আপনি থাকুন, হ্যাঁ, আপনার সঙ্গে আমি আরেকবার কথা বলবো, আপনি থাকুন যতক্ষণ নেটওয়ার্ক সম্ভাবনা হবে। অনেক ধন্যবাদ আপনাকে, আমরা দেখতেও পাচ্ছি, কথা শুনতেও পাচ্ছি। আপনি একটু থাকুন, আমি একটু অন্যদের বলে নি, আপনি যেটা বললেন সেটা অন্যদেরকে বলে নি। হ্যাঁ, আর আপনি শুনেছেন যে এই যে মধু আপনারা কালেক্ট করে দেন বড় বড় কোম্পানির কাছে, তারা সেই মধুর মধ্যে চিনির জল মেশাচ্ছে এবং মিশিয়ে সেই মধু অনেক টাকায় বেশি বিক্রি করছে, এটা আপনি শুনেছেন? খবরটা পেয়েছেন?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, এই খবর আমরা তো বরাবরই জানি। আমাদের কাছ থেকে যে সমস্ত মধুগুলো যায় এবং কিছু যে যারা ওই ব্যাকআপার যারা মধু সৃষ্টি করে, মানে যারা মৌমাছি পালন করে, তাদের কাছ থেকেও মধুগুলো ডাবর এবং পতঞ্জলি ওরা মধুগুলো কিনে নিচ্ছে এখানে খুব কম রেটে। ওদের কাছ থেকে নিচ্ছে 104 টাকা, 5 টাকা কি 120 টাকা এরকম ভাবে নিচ্ছে, নিয়ে এই মধুটাকে আবার ওরা চিনির জল মিশিয়ে ওটাকে সম্পূর্ণ মার্কেটিং।
এটা আপনারা শুনেছেন যে চিনির জল মেশায়, এটা জানেন আপনারা?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, এটা আমরা শুনেছি।
কত বছর ধরে এটা শুনছেন?
এটা ধরুন আর 5-7 বছর আমরা এটা শুনছি যে চিনির জল মিশিয়ে ওরা।
ঠিক আছে শঙ্কর বাবু, আপনি একটুখানি আপনি থাকুন, আমরা আপনার সঙ্গে আবার কথা বলবো। I think what he's saying is a fascinating tale. Mr. Khurana, what you found out maybe 5 months back, what he's saying that these guys know for 5 to 6 years that big companies are mixing sugar syrup with honey. And what he's saying that the number of honey collectors has been going down very steadily for various factors. So in one side, you really cannot match it. In one side, the honey is becoming a bigger industry with more than 2,000 crores per annum industry. But the people who are collecting honey back home, their number is decreasing. So you really cannot match them. There's no marriage point. Also, he's saying that in a year, a honey collector at most gets around 30 to 35,000 rupees. And they are selling out this honey to forest in the rate of around 150-55. And outside market occasionally 250 or like that. But very interestingly, he's saying that big companies who are taking honey regularly often give a rate of around 120-25 like that. So that's the rate being given to the companies, and these guys are so their livelihood depends on that. And he's saying that I kind of came in front of tigers more than 60 times in my lifetime. Just think about it. We go to the forest to have a glimpse of a tiger for once in a lifetime. And this person has seen or met like tigers for more than 60 times. And taking that risk, this person is collecting honey, and that honey is adulterated. I think it's a criminal offense. It's a huge, huge criminal offense. And I thank CSE that they have exposed this whole issue. And I believe they will be going stronger and stronger on that. Let's come back to Mr. Khurana on that. Mr. Khurana, very quickly take us through your investigation. I think all of us want to hear from you very specifically and pointedly that what are from where you started and what are the major landmarks and how you proceeded. Mr. Khurana.
Okay, so Jayanta, it's the beekeepers or bee collectors like Shankar Ori in the northern India actually were the whistleblowers. I mean, their concerns, they raised their concerns, and we could. I mean, they basically mentioned about how the prices were decreasing over the last 3-4 years. And specifically in this period, it was quite astonishing because on one hand, the demand for honey is increasing in the COVID times, but their business was turning unprofitable. And this basically sparked a lot of questions in our mind.
Sure.
And we started taking up this issue 6 months ago. Apart from, and this theory, this comment was coming across from different quarters.
Authority of
beekeepers
India,
from Punjab,
or
beekeepers
FSSAI.
from Uttar Pradesh, beekeepers from Uttarakhand, and we could see that there's this trend. And then we started approaching to traders, and again, it's a very closely guarded trade, closely guarded business, and we could just, without naming people still told us that something wrong is happening. And we heard this thing called syrup, and that bothered us. And that we started tracing that syrup. And then we figured out that sometime in December 2019, actually, the Food Safety Authority of India had put up a direction to the state commissioners and recognizing that something like this is happening. And the order specifically mentioned that better inspect the facilities of the honey manufacturing or processing centers, because something like golden syrup, something like invert syrup, or something like rice syrup is being imported, and that is being used for adulteration. So it started from beekeepers, but it got confirmed through the notices, directions when we researched the Food Safety Authority website. And then again, it happened in May actually. And then there was another notification, another direction for imports by the Food Safety Authority of India. So we could now know that even the government knows something is wrong, but the government is not able to catch. And we basically followed that direction. We started looking at the databases of the export-import, but we were amazed. Nothing like golden syrup, nothing like rice syrup was coming. It was something else. And it was a dead end in some sense for us there. And then we also figured out through some third-party databases, which actually directly collect their information from the ports. And there we could figure out that something like fructose syrup is coming in huge quantities in the last 4-5 years. And that was worry. Now the dots were being connected. On one hand, beekeepers were saying, yes, the prices we are getting half of as much as we were getting earlier. On the other hand, we could hear syrup word. And when we traced it, we could see that it is not golden syrup. It is not rice syrup, which the government of India thinks. It is actually the fructose syrup, which was coming in huge quantity. I mean, more than 95% of fructose that is imported in India was actually coming from China in bulk by the name of industrial raw material.
Okay.
That was a problem. Now we started figuring out, so if this is the case, then something is wrong with the big brands. And therefore we started testing. And when we tested about 13 brands. First, we sent about 8 brands, popular brands, all those big names, and I can name those: Dabur, Patanjali, Apis, Bedina, Jhandu, all these big names, Hitkari. These are big popular brands in northern India, and some of these are very popular in the southern India as well. And now I get to know, in fact, other parts of India, now I get to know that they are popular in Nepal as well as Bangladesh. So what I'm trying to say is, we did not find much here. We sent it to a very reputed lab of National Dairy Development Board. We did not find much adulteration, and that was not really gelling up with what we were hearing from the ground. And that made us worry. So what is happening? And then we also researching what is happening across the world, and we came across something like advanced testing happening vis-a-vis NMR. NMR is like an MRI. Terms you can say it's a signature. It captures the photograph, and the signature of the honey, and then basically figures out what is happening, what is not. And we could see that governments across the world are trying to use this technology to figure out the origin as well as the authenticity of honey. And from there on, when we sent these samples to the so after the 8 samples, we also did another thing. We thought, let's send some more smaller niche brands which sell raw honey and see what is going on with them. And surprisingly, we found adulteration here. And the adulteration that we found in this case was essentially called C4-based adulteration, which is like a very earlier form of adulteration where sugar syrup from cane sugar, let's say, is being added. And therefore, we decided to see now what is happening with the big brands and the small brands, essentially. And we sent all these samples to the German lab, a German lab, very renowned food testing lab, for this advanced test. And this changed the entire story. The entire picture changed. Big brands which were passed in the Indian test actually failed there. And this
so let me reiterate. So you were saying the big brands which passed in India got failed in German lab. Okay.
And some of those also failed on tests like TMR. TMR is a trace marker test for rice syrup that indicates that rice syrup is added, right? Now, on one hand, we knew this, that yes, the Indian test could not catch this adulteration. On the other hand, we knew by now syrups are coming into India, but we still were not sure how syrups are added but still not get connected. And then we again figured out that in websites like Alibaba.com, these marketplaces, the trade websites, big Chinese companies who have their origin in the, let's say, the rice belt of the China, are essentially selling syrups by the name of fructose syrups on these websites and claiming that these can pass the Indian tests. And these Indian tests are C4 tests.
Let me get clear on that. They are claiming that this mixing of these syrups would enable the mixed samples to overcome or override the Indian test for honey.
Yeah,
that they're claiming in the public domain.
Yes, on the websites. And these companies, though, do not really mention that on their original website. They come across as a fairly legitimate businesses. But on the trade websites, they mentioned this. And then we figured out, okay, now what? Now the dots were connecting, but there was still one major issue. Can we procure those samples? And we actually one of our investigative reporters could procure those samples. And you would be surprised that one day, one sample landed on our doorstep by the name of paint pigment through Hong Kong, not even China. And that basically told us that not only this is sophisticated in terms of technology, which can bypass, it is also quite illegal in that sense. So it is like some very established, evolved trade, which is
huge nexus. It must be a great nexus. Otherwise, whole things cannot be done in so smooth manner.
Yeah. So now one last step was still left. That was, what do we do with this syrup? What do we do? What these syrup companies are claiming on these websites? What is happening with them? And we basically adulterated deliberately 25% and 50% and 70% of this syrup into pure honey. The honey, which is raw honey, which we got it from Bharatpur, and also one of the processed honey, which actually had passed in all the German tests, in all the tests so far, right? And this was amazing. Those deliberately adulterated syrups still got undetected in the Indian lab, which was testing as per the FSSAI standards. Now, imagine you can't even add a single drop of that confirmed that the tests that India is conducting right now are not able to detect. In fact, it's a global problem. Honey fraud is a big problem. It's very difficult to detect, and people are struggling. Governments are struggling. It's not only about India, but this basically gave us a sense that and how things are, how consumer in this entire process is being cheated is.
They're taken for a ride.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge expose. I thank CSE again for this great expose. Just have 2 quick questions. One is that this honey, I understand that you also said that FSSAI, they say that when you'll be importing the honey, you need to do that NMR test, which you said is a golden test for kind of knowing that whether there is adulteration or not. But that test was not imposed on the domestic honey. I think that's the case. That it's only for the honey to be imported. not for the domestic honey
Yeah,
clearances. I asked this question to FSSAI. I had a written email interview with them post this CSE expose, and they sent me a reply where they admitted that more than a year back they knew about this honey kind of situation. So that they admitted at that point of time. So very clearly Indian government knew about it, but what really is not known, what made them sitting on it and not doing. So please.
Yeah. Just one point here. You mentioned about the import and you mentioned about FSSAI. It's actually the Ministry of Commerce which had come up in which had mandated this test for honey meant to be exported from India. And this is the NMR test. So that again was also another data point for us that the government knew it, that there's something that is happening. This kind of requirement is
absolutely.
Also, yeah.
Before I go over to our friends across the South Asia, just know from you that you said that, but I knew it very categorically. So you said even the honey is adulterated 50% by volume, still it is going to be passed on Indian standard or Indian test if it is adulterated with Chinese sugar syrup. That's it?
Yeah. So we tested both syrups. Indians. So the other part of the story is that we also could figure out that such syrups are being manufactured in India also. This technology is now being used in India. And in India, it is called all-pass syrup. That's a trade secret. We basically got that syrup as well as the Chinese syrup, adulterated 2 different types of raw as well as processed honey, 25% and 50% and 75%. Up to 50% all sample passed. The one with the 75% did not pass. So that basically confirmed
50% is the cutoff.
That it is a mathematics. It's an arithmetic. How much you can get into.
So 50% seems to be the
50% clearly.
About 50%. I think that's a huge expose.
Imagine sugar syrups up to 50% in our honey going still undetected.
Absolutely.
It's a big
so if you look at the volume of the honey being kind of consumed, it's huge. I'll come back to that on the volume and the other part of the marketing part of it. But let me go to the Bangladesh first. Maqsood Saab, that you have heard, I think all of us have, is a fascinating story. So what do you feel that what's happening in Bangladesh? You are having branded honey, you are having local honey. I'm sure that your people are also consuming honey a lot post-COVID. So what is the situation out there? What's your experience in Bangladesh about the honey industry?
Okay. Actually, I would like to share some of our working experience that we did in the Sundarbans region. So thank you, Mr. Shankar Ali, who is the honey collectors called the Mowal in Bangladesh. So we are also working with the Mowal community. And basically the Mowal are collecting the honey from 1st April to 30 June, these 3 months. And we did one interesting survey in that region. When the season, the honey season is coming, then the sugar selling in the local market is also increasing. So we found
fascinating.
We conducted this survey in the local market. What's the going on in this area? So
and you have documented it. Sorry, because it's a very important thing we're talking about. Yeah. You have documented yourself that sugar sale is going up. It's a documented. It's a documented report.
Yes, we did this job from our side.
Okay, great.
So we found that the number of the sugar selling is increasing in that region, and our government side also very much restricted to control this mixing the sugar with the honey. So the motivation work every 1st April, the honey collectors go to the forest for collecting the honey. So officially the government, the Department of Forest, provide the permission to the honey collectors to go to the forest. And that time, the government side also conducted a lot of motivation work, and sometimes don't mix the sugar with the honey. Because
I get it. I think we have about 10-15 minutes time, so I need to kind of hear all the views. But what you said is very, very fascinating, that sugar sale also goes up when the honey season comes up. So it's very clear, the linkage is very clearly established. So great about that. So let me go to Nepal very quickly. Ramcharitra Shah, Mr. Shah, what's your experience? And also, I would like to know that you talked about your government's proactive, that's great, but what's the ground level experience on honey in Nepal? Mr. Shah. Mr. Shah, you are muted. You need to be seen and you need to be heard. Yes. Tell me.
Thank you again. Actually, after fixing this meeting, I have spoken to the Federation of Nepal Beekeepers to dig out some of the information, and the similar situation is here. I have also gone through the import data of sugar syrup or sugar something, and the large quantity of sugar syrup also being imported in Nepal. We have according to the Federation of Nepalese Beekeepers, they have the maximum capacity so far harnessed 3,500 metric ton annually. And this year, due to the COVID restriction of the movement, they could not harvest even the same.
Okay.
And according to them, only 1,500 metric ton has been harvested. And they also raised that the issue of mixing of
sugar syrup,
Chinese honey or Indian honey with the Nepalese original honey and label it as a Nepalese. So Nepalese
Indian honey with the Nepalese honey. Achha?
Yes. Or maybe whatever coming from India or whatever coming from China in the name of honey. Maybe 1:10 ratio, like 9 kg of Chinese or 9 kg of Indian honey mixed with 1 kg of
from China. Also from China it comes. Also from China honey comes.
Yes. So it said that they have facing the problem of mixing of Indian and Chinese honey with the Nepalese mini and labeling it as a Nepalese honey. So that is also the another.
So it means it's happening also in your country.
Like some of the.
So adulteration is also happening in your country.
In my,
Mr. Shah, adulteration is also happening in your country. Adulteration is also happening in your country.
Since it has been also.
Okay, great. Just a quick go back. Just a quick way back to Maqsuda Saab. That just to check from you, Maqsuda Saab, that whether the Indian brands that are being sold in Bangladesh do they have to go to the certification and the testing process, or just being sold like that? What is the norm in Bangladesh?
Yes, they have also have to the certification process in Bangladesh market, because
but I understand if Indian certification process is not good enough to catch them, it's unlikely that Bangladesh or Nepal certification process is going to catch them. So it's very clear that certification processes or the stand or whatever being there is not good enough to catch these people who are being adulterating. I think that's great. That's huge news. So let me go to Mr. John again. Mr. John, you have heard this whole process and you have been working with this sector for quite some time. You understand. What's your take on that? Is it? I don't think CSE might have found it out recently, but what I understand from talking to the people like Shankar Babu and like that, they have been knowing it for a long time. So is the government or are the governments, should I say, both the state and center, are they sitting on it, knowing all about it? Mr. John?
Yeah, so like 2 or 3 things that I would like to take away from the discussion that has happened on this panel. One is there was a discussion about superfoods. And you see, we have this tendency of creating new superfoods every year, whether it is quinoa or whether it is honey. And then we hype it up so much, generate a huge demand for it, and then the market gets taken over by large industrial spaces. And at the same time, we see that whether it is beekeepers or whether it is honey hunters, they have been reducing over the years. So you have this huge demand-supply gap, and you create actually a very potent scenario where mixing is a natural end point to this whole game.
I understand.
The second thing which Amit was talking about was about FSSAI, understanding that there was a certain scenario that was building up last year. But I also feel that there is a certain contradiction in the whole regulation. At one side, that they realize that there is an issue of syrups or something that is going on.
Sure.
But at the same time, last year in 2019, October or November, FSSAI came out with its own regulation where it reduced the pollen count from 25,000 to 5,000. And when you reduce the pollen count from 25,000 to 5,000, you basically take corn syrup and rice syrup, which can also be recognized as honey.
Please explain.
So you
this.
have this.
No. Please explain this pollen count part. I think for the people who are hearing and seeing this need to know what is this pollen count, how it is related to honey.
So you have a certain pollen count in honey where you are able to differentiate and find out from which flowers the nectar has been collected.
Okay.
And when the nectar has been collected, there is a certain amount of pollen that is always there in the nectar, which gets converted into honey by the bees. So there is a pollen count of 25,000, which was part of the FSSAI regulation, to be considered as honey. That got reduced last year, say at the same time when this sort of notices were also going out, that this pollen count got reduced. And there was a lot of noise in the Indian market as to why this pollen count is being reduced to 5,000. Because it then allows, so most of the time, if you get up to 15,000, 17,000 pollen count in your honey is considered very good. Yeah. But when we have these contradictory things happening in the regulatory space, it doesn't send out a consistent messaging to the customers for the trust to be built up. And so we create scenarios where at the same time,
Mr. John, it does more than that. It does, apart from the consumer, hearing you, it looks like that, it's like that you are saying the thieves to do the continued theft and ask the police to catch them. So it's very clear that what you are saying, that if you allow the pollen count to go down, it means you consciously allowing adulteration to happen. And on the other side, you are saying that don't adulterate. But mind it, they're saying this sugar syrup and all these things in context to import of honey. So they are concerned about the honey being going outside the country, not really concerned about the honey which is being domestically consumed. So I don't see it as a contradiction. I see it as a clear linkage of allowing the domestic honey to be adulterated and the pollen count being consciously going down. So it's a larger story, Mr. Khurana. It's a larger story. I'll come to you. I'll also talk about Shankar Babu while, and then we just have, I think, about 7-8 minutes time. So anything more, Mr. John, you would like to, very important point you just mentioned. Anything more you would like to say?
I think just one point. I think we need to recognize and give an identity to indigenous bees and indigenous honey collectors. I think they need to be put out in the forefront, that these are the people who actually provide the food on our table. And if we don't recognize them and just move towards industrialization, I think that's not an answer. COVID has taught us that, and I think that should be a takeaway for us.
And according to you, in that case, you have to do away this process of only importing the honey that the European wants to be imported, rather promote the indigenous honey, send the people like Shankar Ari, who are being hunting honey for last 30 years, they will be encouraged, they will have some quality of life and all that. So I think very important point.
It's the next generation that has to take this up.
Otherwise they will not. If there is no money, nothing in it, they will not. The whole culture will go down. Shankar Babu, আপনি কি শুনতে পাচ্ছেন আমার কথা?
হ্যাঁ পাচ্ছি।
শঙ্কর বাবু, আপনি কম বেশি শুনছেন, সবাই বলছে যে কিভাবে আপনার কথা অনুযায়ী কিভাবে মধুকে চিনির জল মেশানো হচ্ছে, চীন থেকে সেই চিনির জল আসছে, একেবারে ডিটেকটিভ গল্পের মতো ঘটনাগুলো ঘটছে। কিন্তু একটা কথা হচ্ছে, আপনি আমায় বলুন যে মানে এই পরিস্থিতিটা ধরুন আপনার পরের প্রজন্ম, তারা কি এই মধু সংগ্রহে আসছে, নাকি তারা পড়াশোনা করে বা অন্যান্য কিছু করে অন্যান্য কাজকর্মের দিকে যাচ্ছে? কি আপনার কি মনে হয় সুন্দরবনের পরবর্তী প্রজন্ম?
সুন্দরবনের পরবর্তী প্রজন্ম মনে হচ্ছে আর জঙ্গলের দিকে এগোবে না। জঙ্গলে যা পরিস্থিতি, মধু আর জঙ্গল থেকে কালেকশন করা সম্ভব হবে না।
কেন, কি পরিস্থিতি হচ্ছে জঙ্গলে? কেন, সমস্যাটা কোথায় হচ্ছে?
সমস্যা তো বিভিন্ন সমস্যা। জঙ্গলের উপরে উঠলে তো বাঘ তো আছেই, মধু কালেকশন করতে
বাঘ
গেলে
তো চিরকালই ছিল,
সাপও আছে,
বাঘ তো চিরকালই ছিল, সাপ তো চিরকালই ছিল।
কিন্তু এখন বাঘের যা পরিস্থিতি, বাঘের গতিবিধি সম্পূর্ণ এখন মানে ওর চরিত্র এখন সম্পূর্ণভাবেই আলাদা। এখন এখান থেকে 10 বছর আগে আমরা এখান থেকে 10 বছর আগে বাঘের যেসব বাঘকে আমরা হাঁক মেরে ঘুরিয়েছি, কিন্তু এখন এই 2-1 বছরের মধ্যে যে পরিস্থিতি হচ্ছে, হাঁক তো হাঁক, যদি 50 জন লোকও দাঁড়ানো হয়, একটা বাঘ একটা এরিয়া নিয়ে ঘুরে বেড়াচ্ছে যার নাম দিয়েছে সরকার থেকে বিগ বস, তার এরিয়ায় তো 20-30 জন লোক একসঙ্গে দাঁড়ালেও তার সামনে দাঁড়ানোর মতন ক্ষমতা হচ্ছে না।
এটার মানে কি বাঘ কি খাবার পাচ্ছে না? নিজের খাবার জঙ্গলে নেই বলে মানুষের উপর ঝাঁপাচ্ছে বেশি?
প্রচুর খাবার জঙ্গলে প্রচুর পরিমাণে শুকর,
হরিণ বা অন্যান্য কিছু পাচ্ছে, শুয়োর টুয়োর পাচ্ছে,
সমস্ত কিছু পাচ্ছে।
আচ্ছা, আরেকটা কথা বলুন যে আপনি 30 বছর 32 বছর ধরে মধু সংগ্রহ করছেন, যদি আপনাকে জিজ্ঞাসা করা হয় যে আপনার কি প্রয়োজন, আপনার কি দাবি, তাহলে আপনি কি বলবেন? এই মধুর ব্যাপারে কথা বলছি, কি আপনার চাহিদা, কি আপনি কি চান?
মধুর ব্যাপারে আমরা চাইছি যে একটা মার্কেট হোক, যে মার্কেটে আমরা সরাসরি মধুটাকে বিক্রি করতে পারবো।
আচ্ছা,
এটাই আমাদের প্রয়োজন,
সেটাই চাহিদা। অনেক ধন্যবাদ শঙ্কর বাবু, আপনি আমাদের সঙ্গে সারাক্ষণ রইলেন। আমরা মিনিট 5-এর মধ্যে শেষ করব। Let me go back to Mr. Khurana. And before Mr. Khurana can have the last words, let me say what Mr. Shankar Hari has just said. He said the next generation is not likely to come to this honey collection unless there is more money into it, unless there's more quality of life into it. So the whole culture will be lost in due course. And secondly, he's also saying that the number of tigers and other things that are being there, that there's an issue, but their demand is very interesting. Their demand is take away the middleman and allow us to sell the honey in the market. Let government do a market mechanism where people like him can go and directly sell the market and get the value of it. Not being kind of blackmailed by some middleman who gives some 1,000 rupees at the initiation of the season and then say, whatever you have, you give it to us. So I think that's a very important takeaway from Mr. Shankar Hari. I think he's very categorically saying that. So I think many thanks for that. Let me go to Mr. Khurana for the last word. Mr. Khurana, you've heard, I think now it's getting much bigger. It's not an Indian problem anymore. It's a South Asian problem. Maybe problems of the other countries as well. But before that, just a word about the honey market. What's your finding about the honey market? How it's booming? In one side, the people like Shankar Hari are getting marginalized with time, but the market is booming. What's your finding? Very quickly, Mr. Khurana.
So we heard that the beekeepers are reducing. We heard that bee collectors are reducing, and this is what I hear now today also. So it is very clear that somebody is filling that gap, and that gap is filled by industrially produced sugar syrup. That is something which is happening. And I just want to mention that it is not only about sugar syrup and health. That's a big concern, of course, particularly during the COVID times and the impact it has on the comorbidities and their connection with the COVID. That's one. But clearly, this is much larger than that. This is about beekeepers' livelihood, but this is also about agriculture productivity. They are pollinators. Bees are pollinators. I mean, we all know their impact on the agriculture productivity. It may be an issue about food security also. I mean, going forward, if this is the case, it is about biodiversity. It is about productivity. It's about food security. I mean, that's another dimension, another big dimension that should make all of us worry that we need.
The results were truly
and final
only 3 brands out of 13
sorry to push you because we have been kind of running down the time. Finally, what next? CSE has exposed it. Now I think the sample is with FSSAI for testing. It's making a lot of waves in the kind of public domain. But what next? Is there any case against CSE so far? Or these companies have filed any case so far? You are aware of it?
No, so far no, but of course,
so far no. That's a giveaway in a way. And what's the next step? What's the next step for CSE for that?
See, we have clearly laid out what should happen, and part of that is with FSSAI to do. Part of that is with the Ministry of Commerce, part of that with the ministry, the other ministry, right?
So
it's not only about FSSAI, it's about, they have to work on enforcement standards. It's also about curbing the imports of syrups and honey. It's also about ensuring that beekeepers get their livelihood.
Absolutely. So I think a great discussion. I thank all of you, to Mr. Khurana to start with, but then I think Muhammad Masud Rahman, and then Mr. Matthew John, and then Ramcharitra Shah, and also Shankar Ari from Sundarban, West Bengal, India. Fascinating discussion. And what I say, that we started, when the program started, we started talking about the adulteration in honey. But now we understand it's a much, much bigger story. It's the story of beekeepers. On the one side, the beekeepers' number is going down, but the honey sale is going up. And that gap is being filled by so-called adulterated honey, or whatever we call it. And also, as in the end, Mr. Khurana pointed out, it all about the wider pollination scenario, agricultural scenario. And Mr. John has also pointed out that how this government has allowed the pollen count to go down. So it's not really something, it seems to me it's like this honey adulteration is not by default rather than by design. And as Mr. Ari from Sundarban has pointed out, that they knew for the last 5-6 years is happening. And our friends from Nepal and Bangladesh, they're also saying that it's happening in their country. Maksud, a very beautiful study saying that sugar sale going up in the honey season. So these are dots which we are trying to connect. And what we find is something bigger than that. And when we are consuming honey in the morning, when I take my morning cup of tea with the honey, I feel my immunity should be going up. But the other side, what's happening, instead of my immunity going up, my fat content is going up. My carbohydrate is going up. So I actually been endangering myself by taking this honey. And its government is allowing myself to be endangered, a consumer to be endangered. I think it's the last thing we want from a democratically elected government anywhere from the world. I'm very, very strong on that. It's not only India, it's all about the world. If your government knows that you are at peril, and knowing that you are allowing that to happen, it's something unacceptable. And the single word is unacceptable. I urge my friends to talk among yourselves, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, maybe other countries as well, and try to see that collectively, how can you put pressure on the respective governments and do something which is required for the consumer, and also do something for the people like Shankar Ari, who are giving their whole life, 30 years in the Sundarban jungle, Sundarban forest, facing tigers more than 60 times for 30,000 rupees in a year. That comes to a paltry 2,500 or 3,000 rupees in a month. That means how much? $50. So for $50 a month, they are kind of sacrificing the everything, and the next generation is not definitely to come. I will not urge them to come, but the culture will be lost. So government had to come on there and do something about it. So with that, thanks everybody. We'll keep on tracking this story. We'll keep on tracking this story. Maybe a few weeks down the line, again, we'll sit together and try to see what can we do about it. But at this point of time, we end here. Thank you. Thank you from South Asian Environment Dialogue. This episode we complete here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
we are still speeding in the wrong direction. And the world has also emitted